We can speak to the Scottish Conservative leader, Ruth Davidson. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. You've been praised for your performance in television debates. Do you think that Theresa May should be taking part in such debates ahead of this election?
I think that decision is very much up to the Prime Minister. Let's not forget that in the rest of the UK, even though Scotland had them for many a long year, actually they're quite a new invention. In fact, it's only David Cameron is the only Conservative leader that's ever done one. So I think that really is a decision best left to the Prime Minister.
But if broadcasters decide to empty chair her and go ahead with TV debates, it's simply going to look bad, isn't it?
Well, I think it'll just be a busman's choice for the viewer of who's going to come a long way in second, because I completely believe that Theresa May is the right person to carry out the Brexit negotiations. I think that the choice facing the country is a stark one, that it's either Theresa May that's going to be sitting across the table from Angela Merkel and 26 other European leaders, or it's going to be Jeremy Corbyn.
It's going to look bad, though, isn't it? That to the viewer, that is going to give a message of, well, why on earth wouldn't she want to take this opportunity to debate the topics with the other party leaders?
Well, to be honest, I think the only people that are getting excited about this are the media and indeed the broadcasters, who know that if the Prime Minister chooses to take her message to the country and to doorsteps across the land rather than sit in television studios during the campaign, that they're going to lose viewers. So I really don't think this is one of the big issues on the doorstep of this campaign.
Moving away from the debates then, do you think this election will be an opportunity for Scottish Conservatives to take seats from the SNP based on voters who want to focus on Brexit?
I think this is a huge opportunity for the Scottish Conservatives to take seats from the SNP, and indeed some of the other parties to take seats from the SNP as well. This is going to be a really clear choice. Nicola Sturgeon has come out today saying that she wants to prop up Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn, who's already said that he'd be absolutely fine in waving through another independence referendum in Scotland. And the truth is the people of Scotland don't want it. They don't want another independence referendum. They made a decision. They were told that their decision would be respected. And they've got a First Minister in Nicola Sturgeon who wants to plough ahead regardless, because independence is her watchword. She's got a tunnel vision on that. And actually, people want politicians in Scotland to focus on some of the issues that we have: a falling education standards, in difficulties within our NHS that require attention, and in an economy that's 1/4 away from recession, while the rest of the UK is doing very well, thank you very much.
I mean, there was a smallish majority, wasn't there, in the last independence referendum for those who wanted to stay in the United Kingdom. I mean, how is this going to impact?
A reasonable majority. I think that to call 10, 11 points small, given the Brexit debate we've just had, is stretching it a little bit.
Well, fair enough. But I mean, how is this going to affect any timetable for another independence referendum, this election?
Well, the Prime Minister has made it very clear that she believes, as do I, that the people of Scotland can't possibly be asked to decide their constitutional future until they know what Brexit looks like, how it's played out, the extra powers that are coming back here, which powers go to Scotland, etc. Nor should they be asked to make another decision when they told the last one was would last for a generation, unless there's a majority of people in Scotland who want it. And there's clearly a majority of people in Scotland who don't want it. So this general election may have many things about it, but in terms of the response of the Prime Minister to Nicola Sturgeon's outrageous demands for another independence referendum, it doesn't impact at all.
We've just taken a call from Simon in Glasgow, who's come up with an election slogan for you.
Oh, what's Simon's slogan?
This slogan reads, "An independent Scotland would be like Greece without the weather."
So. Well, I have to say I'm not a big fan of talking Scotland down, but what I will say is that there's lots that we can do, but we do have an underperforming economy in Scotland. We're 1/4 away from recession under an SNP that's made it the highest tax part of the UK, that's doubled elements of business rates for businesses across the country, and you can see what the nationalists and having politicians that care more about breaking up Britain does, and the people that are focusing on the things that matter, like the economy. So I'm working incredibly hard to make sure that we can put on votes and seats in this election. We can start turning that nationalist tide in Scotland, and we can start returning our economy to what it could be.
Now, the SNP is still way above 40% in the opinion polls in Scotland. Maybe not quite where they were, but still, but still sort of a good performance in the polls. But you've said that Theresa May is more in touch with Scots than Nicola Sturgeon. Now, how can a woman who comes from the southeast of England be more in touch with Scotland than Nicola Sturgeon, who comes from Glasgow?
Well, I said on the big issues, actually she comes from Irvine, but I said on the big issues of the day in Scotland, so whether we want to have another independence referendum or not, the Prime Minister is on the side of the majority of Scots who don't want it. Whether we want to separate off from the rest of the UK, the Prime Minister is on the side of the majority of Scots who don't want it. And Nicola Sturgeon is flying in the face of that. And that's why we're seeing in Scotland now a big shift in the polls. I think the last poll for the Times just yesterday showed a sort of 27% swing between the election in 2015 and now between the SNP and the Conservatives, because people across Scotland know that a vote for the Conservatives is the best way to get SNP MPs out, and it's the best way to help keep our country together.
Do you think the appeal of nationalism is slightly on the wane in Scotland now?
Well, I think that I think Nicola Sturgeon made a couple of very basic errors, and I think the first one that she did was to try and weaponise Brexit and showed that all she cares about is independence, because there are lots of issues that Brexit throws up, but none of them are answered by splitting up the UK, which is Scotland's biggest market, closest allies and greatest friends. And I think the second issue that she's done, that she's made a huge mistake on, is trying to pretend that everybody who voted Remain, that Remain vote is somehow a proxy for independence. Now, there are plenty of people like me who voted Remain, who campaigned quite hard for Remain, who are absolutely furious that she's trying to pretend that I was somehow saying that vote meant we should break up the United Kingdom, when it meant nothing of the sort.
But
she suffered a really strong backlash about that.
You've had a good go at Nicola Sturgeon there, but what about the question that I asked about whether nationalism is seen to be on the wane, and how can you take advantage of that?
Well, I think it is, and I think people are looking around the world, and we're seeing there was a big rise of populist nationalist movements in lots of countries, and we've seen even in some of the results that in other European countries, we're seeing that maybe that tide is beginning to turn. But I think in Scotland, I mean, to have a general election in 2015 that was just 6 months after such a seismic thing as the referendum, of course that question was one of the biggest questions in there. And I think that you'll see in this election, you'll see quite a big amount of movement in the polls and in the votes. And we've got a really good indicator that's coming in just a week's time. If you just hang on for 6 days, there will be millions of Scots that go to the polls across the country. Every single town hall in Scotland is up for grabs, every single council position, over 1,000 of them. And we'll see exactly where the country lies.